Alright guys, today we're going to be reacting to how watching the news in Germany is completely different than in America. We're going to see this from an open mind to see what this person had to say about Germany's news, right? Let's see how it goes, right? So make sure you guys go to the Discord. Links in the description, also in the comment section as a pinned comment. And make sure that you guys subscribe. A lot of people just watch my channel, they don't subscribe. Make sure you click the subscribe button. Let's jump in and see what's going on.
PM. You will notice peculiar events as you flip through the channels. When I first saw this, I felt like I was in a dystopian world where you only had one source of information that everybody followed. But as I watched and listened, I realized the news in Germany is nothing like I had ever experienced in the US before. And it made me question, is this a better way? Along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany with our baby, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. The US is coming up on a presidential election cycle in 2024, and things have already been heating up in the media. As we've talked with family back in the States and as we've observed this process from a distance while we live in Germany, we've really started to notice more and more differences in how the news in the US and the news in Germany reports on these events. Of course, it's not just limited to politics though. In general, how the news is reported, how people respond to it, and where people put their trust is different between Germany and the US. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today in my video. Extra, extra! Is the news in America being a little extra? In both the US and Germany, you have various sources of news at different levels and using different mediums to distribute information. In this video, I want to focus on the national mass television medias in either country. So who am I talking about? Well, in the US, the big three national news sources are CNN at third place, MSNBC in second place, and far ahead of the pack as the leader of news in the US is Fox News. In Germany, the largest national news sources are RTL Aktuell, Heute Nachrichten.
Wow, look at that. CNN is just losing so much viewership that, oh my God, this is one of those news networks that is not going to exist in the next 10 years, folks. This right here, CNN, an empire.
Von ZDF, and by far the most watched news source is the Tagesschau from ARD. And the Tagesschau is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the video that I initially perceived as almost a dystopian single source of information when I first moved to Germany and before I understood what it was. So what is it? And why did I have this perception as an American the first time I saw it? So the Tagesschau would translate roughly to day's show or review of the day. And every evening at 8 p.m. for 15 minutes, 10.13 million people in Germany tune into the Tagesschau.
Talk about style, man. Like, you the camera. Whoop. Talk about style. That was nice. Very good entrance.
However, what channel do you tune into to watch the Tagesschau, you might ask? Well, it almost doesn't matter because you flip through the channels and there it is, and there it is, and there it is, and there it is, and there it is. The Tagesschau is a publicly funded news station from the German public service network ARD, the shortened name for
Arbeitsgemeinschaft der öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunkanstalten in der Bundesrepublik Deutschland.
Yeah. That's the German language for you. The main Tagesschau program is aired on the channel Das Erste, but simultaneously aired on ARD affiliated networks like NDR, RBB, SWR, WDR, HR, Dreisat, etc., which are all regional parts of this publicly funded broadcasting network. This publicly funded television and radio system in Germany was established after World War II when the Allies divided up Germany into different broadcasting regions. Those were later merged, and then they further based the broadcasting system roughly off the BBC in the UK, so that it was completely separate from any government influence or funding to ensure a propaganda arm of the government could never
makes sense.
again have control over the flow of information to the masses like what happened under the Nazi regime. Thus, we eventually got the Tagesschau, the main source of news information in Germany, and why it airs on so many publicly funded channels at the same time. In fact, this source of information is so important for the German people that German primetime television does not start until after the Tagesschau at the bizarre time of 8:15. Actually, private TV network Sat.1 once tried to break the Tagesschau stronghold and influence on television by starting their primetime at 8 p.m., but it failed miserably, and even though they aren't part of the public broadcasting system, they were inevitably forced to push primetime back to 8:15 because they just couldn't compete with the Tagesschau. In Germany, publicly funded TV is the main form of television and is funded by, well, the public through a broadcast contribution that nearly every household in Germany must pay.
Wow.
The exceptions to who has to pay the current €18.36 per month per household contribution is very strict and mostly applies to those with low income on welfare or have serious health issues that hinder them from actually being able to use these services. The great irony, though, of the German versus American television system is that the Americans help set up, build, and structure the German system, yet the American system looks nothing like what Germany has today.
And the American ones are trash, man. Trash, bro. Trash. MSNBC, NBC, CNN, CBS, even including Fox News, which is the most conservative. Those are trash, man. I'm talking about trash, real trash. Like right now, if you go to your house and there's a bin where you throw your trash, that's what it is. They're bad, folks. CBS, all these news channels, they're bad. They're bad.
Now, let's compare all of this to the American system. First, when I say publicly funded news or public broadcasting in general, Americans immediately generally think of TV pledge drives asking for money on the one single publicly funded TV station in the US, PBS. However, PBS is not purely publicly funded, and it does receive some federal government funding and sometimes state government funding, but data from 2018 shows it was at a cost of less than $3 per person per year in terms of tax dollars going towards it. Instead, our public broadcasting has well-known telethons and pledge drives to raise funds from private donations from citizens or private foundations or companies, and they also get funding from member stations' dues or other sources. Otherwise, television news generally will come from private companies that are financed through advertisements or subscription services, for example, that are all competing for your attention.
That's how they keep themselves alive, through advertisement. That's pretty much. I mean, they can receive a lot of money. In case of PBS, they're receiving a lot of money, of course, from the public sector, but if there's no advertisements in those shows, done.
At all hours of the day and night. Since the news channels all have their own shows, you don't have the same experience of flipping through the channels and seeing the same face reporting the news over and over again at one time in the evening like I experienced in Germany. In a way, one thing that this made me feel was that I have a lot of different options and perspectives that I could watch and piece together what the common thread of truth was from the different ways a story was reported by the various channels. That's why when I saw the Tagesschau simultaneously being aired on different channels, and based on all of my perspectives that all news sources have a bias, I thought it looked like Germans were being fed one singular point of view rather than a plethora so they could get multiple angles on a single story from. Now, I'm not saying that the Tagesschau is 100% without bias. I don't believe that's possible. However, what I wasn't taking into consideration at first was a very important difference in the two forms of media, and that is how the news is reported. To show the difference, just watch these two short clips of the most watched news sources in either country.
Argentinien steht nach der Wahl des Rechtspopulisten Milei zum neuen Präsidenten vor einem historischen Regierungswechsel.
This is a Fox News alert. Celebrations across Argentina as the libertarian candidate Javier Milei secures the presidency.
News alert, whatever they say, like, exclusive news, Javier Milei, this Americans with the little bells on the background. Pow! It's like, man, I just don't hate.
In yesterday's election.
One of my favorite quotes I've seen to describe the Tagesschau that highlights the main differences between it and American news media is that the news is delivered by news readers, not news personalities. Because of the structure of American news and media, all of the private television channels must compete for your attention, which leads to them becoming more and more entertainers rather than informers. Now again, this is also not to say that things are always so dry in Germany.
Einfach sagen. Und deswegen mache ich jetzt hier diesen Tisch mal kaputt, ja? Damit du mal genau Bescheid weißt.
Now, the Tagesschau in Germany isn't technically without competition.
What was that? Hold up, folks. I have to just watch that video one more time. What the hell was that?
Really informative in Germany.
Einfach sagen. Und deswegen mache ich jetzt hier diesen Tisch mal kaputt, ja? Damit du mal genau Bescheid weißt. Scheiße.
Now, the
He just put his hand like it was. Man, some people are crazy, I'm telling you.
Tagesschau in Germany isn't technically without competition, and it's also not that private news stations don't exist in Germany. That can get a little more similar to American news styles, but Germans just don't value that kind of news and information. The Tagesschau has a 34% share of the audience, nearly bettering the combined audience share of all the American networks, PBS, and cable newscasts combined. And a lot of that is due to the way that it is presented. Besides
Go from Greek classics one day to Italian masterpieces the next. With Norwegian, every day is a
also a difference in what kind of news is reported on between the top news sources in Germany and the US. For example, in the Tagesschau, you don't find any tabloid news, no soft news, but relevant stories about politics, economics, culture, and less sport. But they also are trying to fit the most important stories in a 15-minute time frame, so they generally focus on the big important stuff. Well, they do have time to fit in other less important stuff from time to time.
Das Jugendwort 2023 steht fest und es ist...
Alright, man, this looks so 1984. My goodness. Why some news shows do this? I don't get it.
Goofy.
Now, later in the evening, you do have the Tagesthemen, in which ARD is able to take topics from the 15-minute Tagesschau and discuss them in more detail in a longer formatted show. But that's unlike on, say, Fox News or MSNBC, where you have an entire channel dedicated to reporting news 24/7 and will cover maybe slightly less important but more entertaining stories at times as well to get your attention.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Shrinkflation now apparently coming for our Oreos.
Yeah, there's something about American media that I just despise. It's just the constant bombastic, just keep the trend kind of news. It's just, if nothing gets accomplished, I don't want to see anything kind of a thing. This is how I feel. If nothing gets accomplished, I don't want to see anything. Because think about it, these media, you watch them all the time. You don't get anywhere. You don't become smarter. You don't make money. You just become a vegetable.
But one of the main differences I've noticed in the news is reflected in something that Nathaniel Drew said in one of his videos about the differences in living in the US versus Europe.
Here in Europe, there's a steady stream of news coming from the US, but when I'm over there, it feels like there isn't much talk about what's going on in the rest of the world unless something really big happens, like a war. Most mainstream media barely covers what's going on internationally, and unless you're a worldly American, and there definitely are some of those out there, you don't have very much of an idea of what's going on out there.
Yeah, a lot of
well, to be fair, you're not gonna ask a guy from Brazil to think about or just pay attention to what's going on in England. Like, we have to be fair. We're not expecting all the countries to know what the hell's going on in America, and I'm not expecting Americans to know what the hell's going on everywhere. I mean, it would be great, but these, I don't know what's this argument coming from, where somebody that lives in Uruguay needs to know what the hell's going on in South Korea. I mean, that goes down to the more educated individuals that they can do that, but folks are just trying to just go from point A to point B and make sure that they come back home alive. Like, I understand some of these Americans, they want to go to Europe and just, shame everybody because they don't know about everything. Like, I understand, like that'll be a good quality. However, but this notion that Americans have to go to Europe and know everything about Europe, not only about Europe, but know everything about China, not only China, Japan, that's unrealistic, folks. Unless you're into that field, we can, we can understand. Listen, and I see that a lot. Like, oh, but Americans are dumb. Like, we're not dumb. If you put in another country, you're telling me the Argentinians need to know what the hell's going on in the north of Switzerland? I mean, come on, folks.
Times in the US, you can get the sense that the US is the center of the universe, and you can forget that stuff is going on in other parts of the world because American media just doesn't cover as much international issues as they do American issues. To be fair,
they do all the time. Actually, they do it's very known that they do all the time. However, the domestics news always are going to take over like any other country. It is what it is. You're not going to just spend 50-50 because then you're not being fair with the American audience. It's like Germans probably is going to have the same thing, as almost the same percentage, 80 to 20%. 80% German or probably higher to 20% international. You can expect, different countries to just spend almost the same amount of news on another country. That's insane.
There are factors that play here, like the sheer size of the US always giving material to news agencies, plus the importance that the US plays on the world stage is simply different from countries that are much smaller and have much less influence on the world politics.
So yeah, he actually agreed with me. That's the same thing I said, but it should not be, it goes to every country, not because we are very influential, we should just put ourselves in that situation. I'll gladly do so. And remember, I have to disagree with him because independent media has a stronger influence in American politics, and independent media has a stronger knowledge when it comes down to domestic and international news. And people don't know this. Americans we're kind of weird when it comes down to that. I personally I don't watch the news. I just look for people on podcasts and just discuss all these stuff, not only for the United States, but, politics around the world. It doesn't mean that I'm a professional, but I know, very basic what is going on around the world. And I'm not talking about very simple things like Russia and Ukraine kind of thing. But, I go a little bit deeper into what's going on not only in Russia and Ukraine, but with the why. So, I think we have to separate these categories, right? Because just seeing those numbers from Fox News, CNN, MSNBC are very low. I don't think even people are watching these kind of news anymore. Don't get confused. Don't get confused. And I'm expecting the same from these places in Europe. I wouldn't be amazed if some of these people just look for their news from independent media. But we are. Some of us are very well aware of what's going on in the world. We're not that dumb. Either way, I'm just rambling too much here. I'm gonna just be quiet for the rest of the video. But just to talk about this a little bit in the more on the surface way, you have to go really into the details of a lot of these polls. Let me just finish the video.
In mass media, regardless of political leanings. But 83% of Americans do trust local news stations, which are often much less political and dramatic than national news. Of course, I can't cover all of the differences.
Well, I'm gonna just leave the rest of the video down below. Good stuff. He's very good though. He's very good. Very good in what he does. Very clean. A lot of very simple data to just get you started to understand some of the situation on how both countries see the media. But I can tell you from firsthand, as a millennial, I don't trust my media, my national media at all, and I would not advise you guys to trust it either. You guys want to trust it, that's on you. But they don't trust the media. The majority of Americans do not trust the media. Compared to Germans, they do trust the media. That's my take. The news in Germany is completely different than in America. Yeah, you guys trust it more than we trust ours. So that should tell you. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.